Now we're all caught up. I'm QT, this is Diecast QT, and in this video we're going to be reproducing the car you see on your screen right now. It's a Volkswagen Mk1 Caddy. This is the Hot Wheels casting I'm going to be using. Ghastly piece with that horrible orange window piece and those really wide wheel arches and that really shiny chrome interior. So we're going to be doing something about all of that. It's been a while since I've been back in the workshop, and drilling out the posts here I've just realised that the drill bits I'm using are a bit too soft for the job. I've tried a couple of them and they weren't making much headway with the casting metal, so I'm going to have to get a new set of drill bits for that. As you can see, it just doesn't really do the job. So having tried it on a couple of posts and not making much headway, I made the decision to use some slightly angrier tools in the form of a Dremel with a burr bit on it, which made light work of tearing those apart. And then I've got one of my smaller titanium drill bits and drilled out the middle, which was a little bit more effective. As you'll see on this second one here, it pops off. So first step, get rid of that paint, and my preferred method is using caustic soda. So we drown the casting in boiling water to begin with, and yes, do use gloves and a mask to do this. It can generate, or it does generate, some pretty noxious fumes, and don't use too much or you'll end up with it all over your counter. And you can leave that bubbling away for a couple of minutes. And once you've given it a rinse with some water, you end up with a nice clean casting. So followed up the paint removal with a once over with a Dremel with a steel wire brush on it, just to clean it up a bit. It being a relatively new casting, there wasn't anything wrong with it. As you can see, this casting's got a sunroof, and the car I'm copying doesn't have a sunroof, so I'm going to be filling that in very shortly using some JB World. My method for doing this was to block off the sunroof with a bit of mesh, glue that in place, and then fill in the void on top. With hindsight, I would probably use a solid piece of plastic to do this, because those of you familiar with the Play-Doh barbershop will be familiar with what happens when you push JB Weld against a mesh. So I'm pushing the material into the gap there. I've already run out of it. Smoothing it off, but now wondering where all the material was gone, because there was loads before. And then I realise it's all pushed through underneath. So clear that out and then gingerly place the remainder on top there. So the next thing to get rid of is that intercooler on the front. I don't need that, and I need to strip that back to pretty much flat metal. And there's also a few little details around the bumper area that I need to kind of reproduce as well. So carefully taking away material a little bit at a time, because I don't want to end up tearing away too much of the casting. Switching between a coarse file and a diamond dust file on occasion. And once that's done, finish off with some 600 grit sandpaper just to take the edge off and get rid of any of those deeper scratches caused by the coarse file. And once that's done, I need to turn my attention to these wheel arches, which are much bigger than I need. I want to try and take them back as close to kind of factory as I can, and balancing these takes forever. So, having balanced them, which took too long, I then go about sanding down that JB Weld on the roof, at which point I realise that there's some pits in it that need to be done again, so I get some more JB Weld and fill that in off camera. And here I'm just adding some detail to the front bumper area where there was holes from where the bumper bracket was, as well as a recess between those holes, which I added with a variety of tools. And once I'd done that, it was time to think about how I'm going to do the windows. Now this is the original orange piece, which I've filed down the roof lights for, so it would fit in without the hole in the roof. And I tried to reproduce that in resin using Tinkercad and a 3D printer. Got the measurements not quite right, so wrote that one off as a failure. Then cut out the windscreen from a section of shot glass and got that to fit perfectly, and then went back to square one and used that to reproduce the window piece using some simple Hot Wheels packaging. And that's what we ended up with. So I started by laying down some grey metal primer on this. It looks white in the footage, but I assure you it was grey. See, it's great there. I did the interior piece with some black primer, but the back half needs to be green, as you can see in that reference shot there. So I decided to mask off the cab area. So I'm using some sort of Tamiya masking tape to begin with, and then finish off the job with some slightly cheaper masking tape on the areas that don't need so much detail. So both the body and the bed of the car are going to be painted with olive drab XF62. So that's a flat colour, non-gloss. So mix that with some thinners. Now bear in mind it's been probably nearly a year since I've used my paint booth and airbrush, so forgive me any obvious errors I make along the way here. And I think the pressure on my airbrush is way too high because the paint just splattered on the side of the car straight away. So I couldn't even put on a tack coat, it was just almost immediately painted. Thankfully it didn't make any problem. So that went on nice and evenly. After that I did the interior with the same paint, and then followed up with 3 coats of Pledge Revive It, known across the pond as Future, the floor polish of choice. Next I'm going to be adding in some axle tubes, because I'm replacing the original Hot Wheels ones with some Greenlight reproductions, which are very close to the ones that were on the vehicle I'm trying to copy. So having cut them to size and position them, I'm just going to hold them in place with some super glue. Copious quantities of. Once that had dried, I got rid of the exhausts on the back and covered up that with a plate tailgate skirt, which was designed in Tinkercad, printed in white resin, and then painted with flat aluminium. And then I turned to the decals. Which were problematic. So they're quite small, necessarily so, because we've got lots of tiny details to add here. But they're just so tiny, they just pop off, and then I've got to try and find out where on the desk they've gone. And yeah, this took longer than necessary, but persevered and managed to get them all on in the end.
Much later.
And time to put the car together. So there's the bottom piece with its Greenlight wheels in their axle tubes. Those wheels are an almost exact match for the ones that were on the car I was looking to reproduce. You can see I've filed away the exhaust there. And then we've got the interior and bed. Painted that little skateboard in the back there, a little bit more detail. And then we've got the window piece in there with a little sun visor, a number plate on the front, number plate on the back, and you saw a couple of stickers on the back window there as well. Very fiddly stickers. So housing that was about getting 2 tabs from the window to fit through the middle of that. And get 2 hex screws and secure that in place. And one final test to see if it's a roller, and it is. So that's what we started with, and I'll be interested to hear what you think of the result.